A very good day to you, young learners. Today, we will be learning about a kind of phrase that differs slightly from the ordinary manner in which we use phrases in sentences in English language. These phrases used commonly as poetic and literary devices are called figures of speech. Figures of speech takes language beyond the literal sense. It's often used in both prose and poetry for different purposes. The author or poet may use these unique phrases as poetic or literary devices for emphasis, freshness of expression, make the speech or statement more unique or distinctive. Students, figures of speech are not just used by writers or poets. Often, these phrases are used by us when we converse with others. When someone says, "The leaves were dancing in the breeze," she is as light as a feather. They are in fact using figures of speech. Figures of speech can thus make the meaning of something strong and clear. There are numerous figures of speech used in prose and poetry, but we shall look at 5 of the most common ones. The first figure of speech we will be learning about it is simile. A simile shows likeness or direct comparison between two objects or events. A simile is generally introduced with the words like, as or, as, so. For example, he fought like a lion in the battle. In this sentence, the bravery of the warrior is directly compared to that of a lion using the word like. She was pretty as a picture. Here, the beauty of the lady is directly compared to that of a portrait or picture. Next, we move on metaphor. This is another common figure of speech used for comparison. It is similar to a simile, but in the case of metaphor, words such as like, as, or so are not used. Therefore, there is an implied or indirect comparison between the two things. A metaphor is also known as an implied simile. Let's consider a few examples to understand this figure of speech. He was a lion in the battlefield. In this sentence, instead of saying he fought like a lion in the battlefield, the warrior is indirectly compared to the lion without using the words like, such, as, or so. Variety is the spice of life. In this example, variety is indirectly compared to being the spice of life without the use of words like, such, as, and so. The next figure of speech is related more to the sound of syllables used in the sentence. Alliteration is a series of words that begin with the same letter. Alliteration consists of the repetition of a sound of a letter at the beginning of 2 or more words for a better poetic effect. Read the examples given on the screen. And how the silence surged softly backwards. As you will notice, students, the words silence, surged, softly all begin with the letter S. Similarly, in the next example, she sells seashells on the seashore. Almost all the words in this sentence begin with the letter S, and the sound of this letter is repeated multiple times at the beginning of the words. Hence, the figure of speech used in these 2 lines is alliteration. Let's move to the next figure of speech, that is repetition. This is a very common figure of speech. The word repetition itself tells us that words will be repeated more than once in lines. The figure of speech is therefore defined as repetition of a word or words in a line for pleasing or musical effect. A friend, all my wealth for a friend. In the first example, the word friend has been repeated thrice in the same line and therefore is an example of repetition. Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. Here in this line, the word star is repeated thrice in the same line. The last figure of speech we will be learning about is personification. To understand this figure of speech, let's read the two examples given on the screen. The winds howled. The branches bowed to welcome us. Read out the two sentences. In the first example, wind, which is a non-living thing, is given the quality of howling. This quality is given to show that the wind is blowing strongly. Similarly, in the second example, the branches which are non-living are given the human quality of bowing down. Since non-living things such as wind and branches are given qualities of howling and bowing down, they are personified or treated as a person. Hence, these sentences become an example of personification. Students, you have now learnt the 5 most common figures of speech used as poetic and literary devices: simile, metaphor, alliteration, repetition, personification. You can now read the sentences given in the exercise and identify the figures of speech used in those lines.